Hello and welcome to Prospects to Pros, sponsored by Invesco QQQ, the official ETF of the NCAA. I am your host today, Nate Tice, and joining me, as always, and I'll use that line, is the athletics draft expert and my friend, Mr. Dane Brugler. How are you doing today, Dane? I hope you don't mind I call you my friend, but I feel like we are getting onto those terms after maybe an on-air friend at the very least. How you doing today, Dane?
Well, the amount of I text you more than most of my other friends, so
Yeah.
our text exchanges alone, I think that qualifies. Yeah, I'm doing good. We had just finished with Week 1 NFL, a lot of rookie talk that we'll get to.
Yeah.
I know your head's got to be swimming a little bit with everything that it's so hard after Week 1 because you have these expectations and then things happen and it's like you're reacting to it, and so I just so much to take in. The Rodgers injury last night, as we record this, it's fair to wonder if we're ever going to see him in the NFL again. These Achilles injuries for a 40-year-old man are just not quite as simple for maybe younger athletes. So plenty to go through with that. But for today, I know we're going to focus more on some prospects and some rookies.
Yeah, the pro element is in full swing already, and it's just I can't believe it was only 4 plays. Felt like there was just so much build up leading into that. I just feel gutted for the Jets coaches, the Jets fans, everybody, because just wanted to see it. Just wanted to see it unfold. I think everybody did that watches the NFL. But again, this is prospects and pros, so we'll hit up both ends on this show, especially. But looking at, we're already diving in. I think we're knee deep, maybe quad deep on the 2024 draft at this point in time, and it's middle of September right now. But I think the big discussion point and a big kind of theme of this draft is going to be the quarterback draft class. Not only the top 2 guys, but the race for QB3, as we've put it. And who knows if the top two shakes up. But at this point in time, I'm feeling pretty good about those top 2 after watching them play so far this season. But the QB3, it's a deep class. And I know we talked about this already previously, but I think this is just going to be an updated segment. This is going to be a bit, I think, throughout this year where me and Dane are just going to update the tally board. Look at what's the leaderboard look like, who had the best showing the previous week, because that's how it's going to play out this season and postseason after, once the draft process starts getting really in full swing. So just start with the QB3 discussion. Dane, who really stood out to you today? I know there's one big matchup that happened between Texas and Alabama and a particular quarterback there. But who really do you want to lead off with this QB3 discussion?
Yeah, I think we have to start off with Quinn Ewers, Texas quarterback, who, we know the background, 5-star recruit, all this pub coming in. He was a millionaire before he actually took his first college pass with NIL. And so with that, you're going to be an easy target for, criticism if you don't perform on the field. And last year was a little up and down. But I think it's fair to, we talked about this before. He was basically a freshman last year.
Yeah.
So coming into this year, going to Tuscaloosa, with all the talent that he has around him, he arguably, I still think Ohio State has unquestionably the best wide receiver depth chart in college football. Washington is up there, but Texas is, close to the top with what and we saw that, but it doesn't work unless Quinn Ewers is dialed in and making some of these throws. And, I wrote about it last week, leading up to the game. He was on deep passes on posts and go routes. He was completing 21% of his throws in his career at Texas, just not good enough. When he targets Xavier Worthy, he's completing 51% of his throws. Like it was not good enough up to that point. Saturday night in Tuscaloosa, it was good enough because he played his best game that we've seen at the college level. Everything was clicking. Absolutely. Yeah, we knew he had the arm, but it was the consistency factor. Could he, in different types of throws, understanding what the defense is doing and then trying to attack them, and I think Coach Sarkisian, he knows he had a good game plan going in. No more Bijan Robinson, so the run game isn't as much of a threat, even though they're still a good running team. But if they're going to win, it's going to be through the air, and we saw that Adonai Mitchell was outstanding. He's a guy that we'll be talking about more and more. He had 3 catches, but man, did he make them count. He had that nice sideline catch against Kool-Aid McKinstry, and then 2 touchdowns. One on a simple slant that he beat Kool-Aid with a nasty release. I think Kool-Aid was expecting that inside help. Safety kind of got sucked up by the backfield action and left just a wide open void for Mitchell. But then that second touchdown that he had, which was really the dagger that was the exclamation point for Texas in that game. Just a beautiful stutter and go.
Right.
It is rare for, like, how many receivers can make an Alabama corner look slow? I mean, just
Right.
there's not many guys. Mitchell's one of them. For a guy that's 6'4", to have that type of acceleration, that type of twitch, it's rare. It's very uncommon. And so the book on him coming out of Georgia, because he transferred over the offseason from Athens, was okay, very gifted, but can he be a detailed receiver? Can he be a guy that Texas game to that next level? And some of those questions still exist in terms of expanding his route tree. But when you're that gifted, you're still going to make an impact because you're better than a lot of guys you're facing out there on the field. So, and then Xavier Worthy, I think, he had that drop early on, but he came back strong. His touchdown was, that moonshot by Ewers, who perfect bucket shot.
Moonshot's the right word too. That thing was dropped literally off a crater on the moon.
There's many times when you watch the tape and you lose the football, it gets off the screen, but that's how it was. But it was perfect, and
it was.
Credit to Worthy, because he had to kind of bend his route, track it over his shoulders, make that Willie Mays style catch.
Yeah.
And he did it really well. So, he has the speed, he has the tracking skills. Consistency's still a question with him, but in the right role, you can see why he's a weapon as a prospect. So, I mean, going back to Quinn, I mean, he had an outstanding game, and, this is why he started the year as my quarterback 4. He was 20th overall on my early top 50, which, again, it was based more on potential than production at that point. But Saturday, it was a little more fulfilled production, and we saw that potential shine through in the box score, on the tape, in real time. And it was great too, just to see just his teammates after that game. Oh yeah, that was a lot of fun too, and something as an evaluator, you always love to see with quarterbacks. I mean, say what you will,
it sounds corny, but that is such a real thing.
People will scoff at it, but that matters. I mean, it's something that when scouts go to these campuses and watch practice, I wish fans could listen to the questions that they're asking at coaches. It's how is he in the locker room? What do his teammates think about him? It's all these questions that more those style questions.
Is he early for workouts? Is he first in drills?
More so that than what's his favorite route to throw? What's his? It's more because they can see that stuff on tape. They want to find out, what is he like behind closed doors? What is he like in the locker room? What kind of worker is he? Just all of those things that you don't necessarily see on the tape and on the broadcast, and how the media portrays him. So for Quinn, it was definitely a night where he helped himself, because it's September. It's mid-September. Right or wrong, this game will have more weight than probably unless they make the playoffs, any other game that Texas has on the schedule right now. So he certainly helped himself in the NFL draft conversation.
He absolutely did. The flashes is why I stayed high on him, because his flash throws were as good as anybody. He's like built to throw trick shots. Just how he throws is just built. It looks like everything's a trick shot, and it was just all about consistency. He doesn't have overwhelming size, overwhelming speed, or anything like that. So you got to win this way. You have to win, be able to throw a little bit off platform from the pocket on time. And he's a merchant in quick game. He is just he is so good getting that ball out, throwing screens and flats, and just quickly and getting the ball in his playmaker's hands. And
credit to the offensive line too, because they kept him upright. You think about the last time we saw him against Alabama last year was on his back, knocked out of that game.
We're just getting knocked out the entire game. Jeez.
0 sacks for Alabama in that game. They had 6 pressures total. 6. Last year, Alabama averaged 19.5 pressures per game. And obviously, no more Will Anderson. But they only had 6 pressures against that Texas offensive line. So not only the weapons at receiver, but the offensive line did their job. And that was a big part of it. But getting the ball out quickly. Yeah, absolutely.
He called
that's part of it, too.
That's a game that from scheme nerd standpoint, I can't wait to watch as well. Just like study it that way as opposed to just watching Quinn the entire time
Right.
and like actually watching what they're doing because some of the designs and use of motion was really, really cool. But also just his eyes were always going to the right spot, which speaks to both his maturity and also how he's getting coached up. So complimenting him both there. The times that his feet got wonky, it wasn't to me him, and this has been a problem for him in the past. I'm going to this guy hell or high water, and then
Right.
his feet get all wonky because he's waiting for that guy to come open and throw it, even though he shouldn't. Paul Chris, who ironically is on this coaching staff now, his great term that I always liked was listen to your feet. Let your feet tell you you're late. And that's like, man, I'm ready to throw, but he's not open. There's a couple times his feet got wonky, but it was on the receiver and not him. The receiver was, you know, taking a little too long on the break, and that actually was encouraging. So, there's an explanation for the plays that usually I ding him on, which I think is improvement. So saying even the negatives that he has improved upon, which I think is so good. Also the tight end, Jatavion Sanders, who I know you're very high on as well. I think he's your tight end too, I believe.
Yeah, only two tight ends made by top 50. Brock Bowers, obviously, and then Sanders. And yeah, that's a good shout out.
Yeah, he looked great. That's exactly what you want him to be. He's an offensive weapon. Yeah, he's a little undersized, but he can move. And against Alabama, he was really, really moving. Moving on. Anything else on this game, or do you want to just keep on the quarterbacks?
Yeah, I mean, let's keep going with the quarterbacks. I think that, I mean, yeah, it is a running bit a little bit, but it's something that we'll be touching on almost every episode because quarterback 3 is fascinating when you have okay, let's frame it this way. How many assuming Caleb and Drake May are 1 and 2, or 2 and 1, whatever you do want to do.
At least you appeased me a little bit. You throw me a bone there.
How many? Okay, what are the realistic names that you think are in this quarterback 3 conversation? I think it's fair to say Quinn Ewers.
Yep.
JJ McCarthy, who was my quarterback 3 coming into this year, and through 2 games, he has done nothing to hurt himself. Yeah. And again, the disclaimer, it's East Carolina and UNLV, but he's still completing almost 90% of his passes so far this year.
Sometimes it's just like,
the big thing with JJ is just seeing it quicker, making the on-time throw, and he's done that this year. It just everything looks a little more easy for him, which again, the competition could do that, but another year of maturation can also do that. So and also speaking of JJ McCarthy in that offense, Roman Wilson is a fun receiver. He was another guy. I did a film room, and another guy I included in that film room. He's a little undersized, but man, he's speedy. He's quick in and out of his breaks. I like him quite a bit. He's already got 5 touchdowns this year. So Roman Wilson, a receiver that's a little underrated in the senior class, but I think his arrow is pointing way up. I mean, he's based on what I've seen so far, he's a top 4, top 5 rounds, belongs somewhere in that mix. So Quinn Ewers, JJ McCarthy. I know
Riley Leonard was my QB3.
Yeah, and I do think he belongs in there. I mean, you and I spoke last week how the Clemson game was fine, but it really wasn't a reason to push him up. Yeah, and he was this past they had a FCS opponent, I think, this past week.
Lafayette. He went 12 for 12.
Oh, so, that's not bad. Yeah,
not bad. I'm gonna say I didn't watch the film. I looked at the stat line. I was like, okay, that's one I probably will never check out. So I'll just think the 12 for 12 was probably pretty good.
But he's at least in that mix. And so those 3 guys, and then I think the 4th is Shadur. A guy that we talked about at length last week. But is there any besides? Before we really dive into more on Shadur, is there anybody else besides those 4 you think is a realistic candidate for quarterback 3 at this point?
At this point, no, but there's ones that the stock is ascending. And I think there is Tyler Van Dyke from Miami, which I think we'll talk about in a moment. Someone I was high on 2 years ago, and then kind of really cooled on him. Miami's offense was, I just thought, not conducive for his skill set because he's so long and everything. But we can talk about him in a sec because against Texas A&M, though, he looked great.
Awesome.
And then I look back to the original Miami squared game, Miami versus Miami game, and he looked good there too. And all the things that I saw in that first A&M game, and then going back to watch the Miami game, it's like, okay, this is consistent no matter who the opponent is. So that was pretty cool. I think we'll talk about him in a sec, but I do want to talk about Shadur because talking about the QB3 discussion, even Mel Kiper from ESPN said today that he right now is a guaranteed high first round pick in his QB3 for this next upcoming class, which again, like we said, there's a lot of candidates. So to have just that definitive statement, it is interesting if coming from someone like Mel Kiper. So let's talk about Sanders, because I know I think we have some mutual feelings on how that second game went against Nebraska. So I let's just kind of talk about how he looked, because I thought it was very interesting, but good and bad ways.
Yeah, like there are 2 or 3 draft analysts, in this industry that when they say something about a player, I pay attention. And Mel Kiper is one of those guys.
The OG.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And you know what? Mel is part showman. So, like he's making the only reason to use a word like guarantee about a prospect in September is for headlines. And obviously we're talking about it. So, it worked. But I mean, Mel Kiper is doing that for a reason.
The Jimmy Clausen guarantee.
Or the Mike Williams.
That's right. Michael.
Yeah, there have been a few. Yeah,
I remember that draft because it was Mike Williams was the number 1 player, and it was just like as other guys were going, and they just like, it's like, why is this guy still around? I think he only went like 10th or whatever, but still, I remember that draft.
It didn't quite work out, but it's something that, because the exact quote was what he's a guaranteed high first round pick, or he would be guaranteed to be the number 1 pick in the 2025. Right.
Shedeur Sanders to me right now is a guaranteed high first round pick. Kiper Jr. also said Shedeur would be a guaranteed number 1 overall pick in the 2025 draft if he chose to stay with the Buffs for a second season.
Quite the statement.
That's a big statement.
Yeah. And look, I get it. We talked about it last week. I mean, and I wrote about it on The Athletic after that game against TCU, was this tape is his formal application to be considered for quarterback 3. Like there's a lot of good things on here. You see
references on there.
Yeah. Good enough velocity. You see accuracy, you see touch, you see mobility. He can be creative, but he doesn't necessarily rely on it too much. He can change platforms. There's a lot to like there. The mechanics aren't great, but I don't care. I think mechanics are overrated for a quarterback. Yeah, if the ball gets there on time and it's accurate, I don't care what the technique.
I mean, look at Quinn Ewers. I would never teach anyone to throw like Quinn Ewers.
Right.
But it's just, who cares? Ball's there on time.
It's from the feet on up. Yeah, exactly.
All matters. Yep.
But against Nebraska, a better defense than TCU, I do think there were a few things that maybe stuck out as, this guy, he still got a ways to go in terms of reading the field and anticipating things like that. And I mean, I know you watched it. What'd you see?
Yeah, the Nebraska had a great game plan. First off, by credit to their coaches, was a lot of drop 8. So scheme wise, and you could see because Colorado leaned into, especially against TCU and early on Nebraska, was a lot of quick game. And how to really limit quick game is to drop 8, flood the passing lanes. Right. It's like you're trying to stop a driving team, just run a 2-3 zone in basketball. So that's what they did. And they're making him make quick decisions because that makes you go 1-2 really quickly. It's a quick game. You have to operate quickly. Ask Aaron Rodgers. So when we see like how that kind of broke out, the other thing that they did was they started blitzing him whenever they got into an empty formation, which against TCU, that was putting Travis Hunter on an island. They were just picking apart TCU's defense out of empty. So what Nebraska was making him do is like, you have to make the right decision right away. And he wasn't. And I think that's right there in the NFL. You have to do that every play. So this was just a good kind of little snapshot of like that, what they want to major in, what Colorado likes to do when they pass the ball. They already got taken away. They made it harder on him, and he didn't always have the answers. Also, some of some of his awareness and decision making kind of surprised me, like taking sacks and field goal range and everything. But again, this is not a guy that's had a lot of big game starts. Yes, he is draft eligible, but he did come from FCS in Jackson State. Right. And again, he was a big recruit and everything, or he had some pedigree as a recruit, and he's Deion Sanders' son. But you could just see that this guy needs reps. He needs time. He needs ways to get to 1 to 2 to 3 or to shortcut reads. And that's fine. But you do see some ball placement. Throwing on the move is really nice. And you can see when he's confident with the throw, he gets it out, puts it on the money. But you can just see some of the blemishes and some of maybe his progression when he gets kind of a little dumbfounded a little bit.
Right. Yeah, and that's fair, and it shouldn't be surprising. This is a
No.
guy that is still, he's a true junior, like you said, coming from the FCS level. There's things he just hasn't seen yet, and
That's
things that he has to work through on the fly. But that's to be expected. And I
2 games. We're got a
yeah,
long way to go for him.
and we've got Oregon and USC coming up on the schedule. Oregon, they just gave up 30 plus to Texas Tech on
Mhm.
defense, but that Oregon defense might be one of the better defenses that Colorado sees all year,
Mhm.
which isn't saying much, but it's at least something I want to see because, at Nebraska, like you said, the game plan was great, but
Yeah.
I don't know how many pros they have on defense for that
Yep.
team.
Yep.
ECU certainly that they might be the worst defense that Colorado sees all year. So seeing him, and then against USC it has a better defense than last year, but it's still not great. But we
Right.
know Caleb's going to put up points, and
Yeah.
so
Can they get
trading
into a track
haymakers.
meet? Yeah, exactly.
Right. How does
Yeah.
that play out? So,
That's a great point, though. Just like it's perfect because Oregon's a better defense, but maybe not an elite one. So it's like,
mhm,
okay, how do you answer against a good defense? And then USC is I think, a perfect game for him to watch because I feel like I like when they're kind of balanced as far as like one opponent is against the opponent, they're kind of similar ranking wise. Okay, that's a solid defense, decent defense, but has Holy against a solid offense that's not perfect. I think that's a kind of like a fair matchup. Sorry to cut you
yeah.
off, but that's a great point to make.
No, and I think it's one thing that I've been probably the most impressed with is just his poise. You think
Yeah.
about all the headlines, you think about all the attention on him. Game day's going to Boulder this weekend, and they're playing Colorado State.
Yeah.
It's not this big matchup necessarily on paper, but it's he's the main attraction, and aside from his dad. So it will be interesting to see just how he handles it throughout the year. There will be some rough spots. But long story short, he's absolutely in that conversation for quarterback three. If the draft were tomorrow, I do think there'd be several teams that would have him as quarterback three. I don't think it'd be consensus, but I do
Yeah.
think that there's a good chance a lot of teams would look at the package of traits and say, yeah, we want to work with that.
Right.
Not just for who he is now, but what he's going to be 6 months from now, and a year from now, and the rest of his rookie contract. So certainly understand the optimism with him. But yeah, I mean, I think that when we talk about these potential quarterback threes, those four. We'll talk about Tyler Van Dyke. One other dark horse I want to mention is there's definitely some love for Spencer Rattler, South
Yeah.
Carolina, among scouts and he's
No,
played
I
well
get
this
it.
year. Yeah, there's the North Carolina tape didn't really work out that great for South Carolina, but he's dealing with bad protection.
The
I,
whole
I
game.
counted 3 or 4 drops in that game, but Rattler was still playing tough through the end. So he's helped himself through 2 games, Spencer Rattler, and
And the
if he can,
second half of last year, that's
yeah,
gonna
oh
stick in
yeah,
people's mind because
A-
he
a-
has
and
calmed
if he
down so much.
continues to do that, it's
Yeah.
going to be
You
some.
can't
And the biggest thing.
you can't teach his arm talent. You just
Yeah,
can't.
exactly. Yeah, just the
You
pure
can't.
ability.
Yeah.
He's got some movement to him. He's got the ability to throw from different platforms with ease. There's a lot there to like, and I mean, there's a reason we were talking about him as a potential top 10 pick not too long ago. The character stuff will be something we have to work through, but
Yep.
it's something that I don't think is as much of a concern now as it was 2 years ago. I do think that there's an element of him showing maturity that scouts have been optimistic about. So not saying should be in that top tier of quarterback three
Yeah.
candidates, but he's at least a dark horse with a Van Dyke, maybe with a Bo Nix as a
Yeah.
guy that, hey, don't forget about him because there is some love on the streets, in the scouting streets for a guy like this.
I get it. I think he has a throw at least like every once in a while, once a month that you're just like, holy crap, like
That's it.
that.
Yeah.
It's it. It's an S tier throw that you can't teach, and
It's kind of crazy. Like you think about,
I feel like he's been in my life for forever.
I know,
Like
right?
I feel like I've talked about Spencer Rattler for so long, and he's still around.
You think about we've seen what 6 quarterbacks go in the first round once. That was the 1983, that
Yeah,
legendary draft.
yeah.
It's only happened once. Even 5 quarterbacks is pretty rare.
Hmm.
But I mean, looking at it right now, obviously the teams matter. who's going to be looking for a quarterback after this year. But I mean, we're going to see it. I feel confident saying at least 4 with
Yeah,
a
I'd say
realistic chance at
7.
5. And then an outside chance of maybe even 6. We just said that there's maybe 4 guys in that quarterback 3 conversation. So those 4 plus the top 2, that's 6 right there. It'll be really interesting to see how this continues to play out because these quarterback this is a rich quarterback draft. There's so many guys. The a lot of underclassmen that we're talking about.
Mhm.
They have to declare obviously. It's declaring now is a little different than before with NIL, and like a guy like Shadur, think about the money he could make
Yeah.
if he wants to stay and play for Pops one more year. If he wanted to go that route, if he's not the guaranteed first round pick in 6 months from now. So
Mhm.
yeah, it'll be a really interesting conversation with some of these quarterbacks.
And there's so many fun like day 2 and day 3 guys that
Yeah,
it's loaded. It's not that's what Dane's saying too is that like there might be 4 or 5, 6 in the first round, but it's also deep. There is
very
just
deep.
so many interesting guys. I mean, I'm watching freaking Hawaii tape to watch Shager. Like because he's interesting. He might as a day 3 guy. And then Hardison, Gavin Hardison, who we talked about
UTEP,
a couple weeks
yeah.
from UTEP, but that dude can wing it. And that's like an NFL arm. That's what we keep saying. But these are interesting day 3 guys. And then
Yeah, kind
Kansas,
of like Jalen Daniels.
Daniels from
It's real
Kansas, yeah.
watching him against Illinois. Like, I mean, Jerzon Newton is just bearing down on him, and he just makes a miss at the goal line and
Launched
creates a
50
play.
yards
And
on the move.
yeah, like he's undersized. I mean,
Yeah,
he'll be under 6 foot,
yep.
probably around 212. But a
That's
really good
very
athlete, good enough arm. I mean,
yep.
he's got playmaking potential there. A
And they
guy like
love him. They
yeah,
love him there.
yeah.
So so
I
that's
mean,
another
Cam Ward, what
yeah.
he did to
Yeah.
your Badgers,
Oh my god.
he's a guy that some teams really like. And Joe Milton, people can't quit Joe
Nope.
Milton because of that arm. There's still so many questions he has to answer as a quarterback, but
Yeah.
when you have a special arm like he does, guess what? You're going to get chance after chance after chance to go see what you can do.
I know. Oh my god. Then there's Sam Hartman. I know. We could just spend like 40
Yeah.
minutes just listing off guys. I do want to talk about Tyler Van Dyke for Miami
Yes.
because
What
I
a difference a
again
year makes.
oh my goodness. He just real quick, I'll just give my little note. Everything looks tighter with him.
Yeah.
He's such a long-limbed guy. I can relate. I'm very long as a even as a tall guy, I have a long wingspan. I picked the worst position to play with my like body type. It's like no wonder my
Right.
dad and my uncle play tight end. Makes a lot of sense. But like what him and Tanner McKee, when I first scouted them a couple of years ago, Tanner McKee's with the Eagles now from Stanford. They're just so long, and the release always kind of felt elongated. And when you're not kind of twitchy like a Trevor Lawrence is, it kind of can just really like, oh man, you're just it's decent arm, but like, oh, you feel like just a step late, or there's just too much that can unravel here. Everything just looked sped up. His footwork looked great. He played balanced. His motion looked tighter, still a little long, but tight. And I was super impressed. I want to kind of hear what your thoughts are, but I'm very bullish on Van Dyke. Again, I'm rebuying the stock I sold, and because I really liked what I saw against Texas A&M and in the Miami game earlier in the year, the Miami squared game, Miami
Right.
versus Miami. I really liked what I saw, so I kind of want to hear what you think as well with Van Dyke.
Yeah, new offensive coordinator,
Yeah,
Shannon Dawson. The biggest thing
third OC
is
in 3 years. That's for Van Dyke, which is
right.
not something you got to note.
He looks more poised.
Yeah,
He just better command of the offense than a year ago. I think the revamped offensive line that has a lot to do with it. Like bringing in Javian Cohen at guard, Lee at center, because Van Dyke's not a top tier athlete. He's a guy that wants to win from the pocket,
yep.
and that's what we saw against A&M on Sunday or on Saturday. We saw a guy who was a lot more confident back there because I think he was trusting the blocking in front of him. And A&M, they were running a lot of zone and just rushing 4, and Van Dyke's like, all right, sure, let's do it.
Shredding them.
Yeah, he did. And going back to last year, he had one of the lowest completion percentages when pressured. It was like 37, 38%, something like that. This year, it's closer to 60 so far. His third down percentage, much better. And I think it just comes from understanding protections, better
Mhm.
trusting that protection and having that confidence really carry over and manifest itself in your throws down the field and your reads down the field. So
Yeah.
I think with Van Dyke, so far so good. He's off to a
Mm.
really good start. It's just good to see Miami, with all
Play
that
well.
talent they have,
Yeah.
making some plays. So, and on defense, they've got some guys that were showing out. So, yeah, that was fun to see. I don't, Van Dyke's a guy that still needs to do more
Yeah.
just to get into that, conversation as a, top 100 or someone that you consider a day two guy. But through two games, he certainly helped himself.
Absolutely. That's kind of where I'm at with him. And just he's never been the offense 2 years ago was so frustrating because it was all downfield or it was screens, and then they would throw downfield and not have a check down option for him. So he was just
Mhm.
throwing it was either 40-yard go ball or create, which is not a way to live.
Right.
That's why the offense coordinator is not there anymore. And it also was just it's nice seeing him progress and throw guys open. Like he was throwing curl routes and placing the ball. So, like what you're saying, confidence. I mean, in life, confidence is such a huge thing, but especially at the quarterback position, where these guys can just throw on time. Like you're never have to be fearful about him being a big game hunter, which you saw, and tacking down the field. But it's nice seeing a little more nuance and maybe some creativity with his throws. And yeah, like you say, he's not an overwhelming athlete. I kept saying he's long. I used to call him the ibis because he's built like a stork. So with of course
Right.
from Miami, let's go with the Ibis. But him just like he threw a screen where he changed arm angles. And I was like, okay, he looks like a football player as opposed to maybe a robot that he looked like in the past. So really, really fun QB class and a lot of guys standing out. But let's go to the top. Keep talking about QB3. Maybe let's go with a lot of people's QB1. Do you want to do a little Caleb Williams watch real quick and just he's my QB1B. I'll be honest, still with Drake May, but let's talk about Caleb Williams because he has done nothing I think to dissuade anybody from looking at him as such a highly touted prospect. And what have you seen so far with Caleb Williams this year, Dane?
He's been as expected. I mean, he's
Yeah,
just so good. I know Stanford has really fallen off, but watching him against Stanford over the weekend it was a joke. I mean, his like adjusted completion percentage was 95%. So this guy has been spot on. When Stanford would drop 8, Caleb would just pick them apart because you're not getting a pass rush. When they do pressure him,
that's that's the
he knows
difference
the
between
answers.
Sanders and Caleb Williams right here.
Yeah,
But sorry
right.
to cut you off.
No, Williams just has more answers to the test. He does.
Yeah,
Here's another guy in my film room. I posted one of his clips where they're at the 15-yard line. They run an RPO. He reads it and he throws a falling backwards, flat-footed, just kind of his momentum taking him backwards. Throws just gets enough torque on his throw to get the ball on point to the slant. I mean, just a ridiculous talent with the arm that he has, the processing that he has, the instincts that he has. He's a much better runner with the football that I think people give him credit for. Like he's a legitimate dual threat guy if he wants
yeah,
to be. So it's just how effortless everything is with him. So we could make the same statement with him as we had, with JJ McCarthy, in terms of competition. They've played San Jose State, Nevada, and Stanford. So, it's these defenses aren't anything to get excited about, but we're talking about him as being the clear cut number one overall or the
right.
clear
You want
favorite
to
to
see
be number one overall.
dominance.
You want to see him live up to that. And so
Yeah.
far, he absolutely has.
Yeah, you want to see dominance. If they're playing inferior
Yeah.
competition, make them look like inferior competition. That's a huge thing. They want you. They have to look like the dude. I
It's
it's a real
surprising.
thing. I know it sounds like intangible, but it's a real thing. That guy better look like the best player on the field, and he does.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about maybe that freshman returner receiver that they have.
Doesn't hurt.
That doesn't hurt as well.
Right.
But I
What
know we'll probably talk about him in 2 years from now. But holy crap, that guy too.
But quarterback is one of the most frustrating positions to scout college to the NFL
Yes.
because and this is just my opinion. The number one reason is it is so hard to account for the jump in play speed between
Mhm.
what these guys see and process in college compared to the NFL. This is, in my opinion, this is what's holding Justin Fields back. This is why Like he's so methodical with his process and what he's doing, even his drops. Like he's just too methodical, and that
It,
you just can't be. You got to be faster.
yes.
And
Tries to be too
he
perfect. And it's like, you
yeah,
got to play.
and
You
he
got to
is this.
play.
He's a ridiculous athlete.
Yep.
It's just amazing. But in terms of being more deliberate and more quick with what you're doing, it's not there for him yet. And entering year 3, it's still a
Yep.
problem for him. Zach Wilson, the game just moves way too fast for him.
Way too fast.
These are the problems with these young quarterbacks that don't make it. And when you scout these guys in college, you try to account for that. And it's hard because there's just no accounting for NFL speed. Now, that's why Quinn Ewers doing what he did against an Alabama defense.
Right.
Half of that, more than half of that Alabama defense will be playing on Sundays in some shape or form. So, that makes you feel better about the evaluation. But, with Caleb Williams, he does the quick reaction plays that he has. That's why I'm so optimistic about his transition, because everything is so lightning quick with
Yeah.
his decision making, his ability to get the ball up and gone. I mean, he will make. I've never seen a quarterback make as many sidearm throws and just change the arm angle with ease than he
Yeah.
does. But he has an
The
instinct
receiver
for it.
screen, yeah, against Stanford. He's fallen. You were just about to say instinct before I cut you off. That's exactly it. It's a receiver screen, but he knows that there's a free runner coming at him, so he
Uh,
works away from him. That's awareness, and then it just trick shot it, throw it like freaking submarine style to his receiver, and
Yeah.
it's a perfect spiral with velocity.
Yes.
It's yeah,
It's
it's a
all quick
crazy.
reaction, like just having that in his brain, that he understands what the defense is doing and he knows what he needs to do to account for that. So with a guy like Caleb Williams, I just feel a little bit better about him adjusting the NFL speed because of his play style and that quick reaction arm talent that he has. So again, it's the hardest part. That's why there's no such thing as a quote unquote sure thing at quarterback
Right.
transitioning, because again, that jump in college speed to NFL speed is something you really can't account for on tape.
Right.
And that's the gap. That's the projection you're making. And it's something we've seen a lot of young quarterbacks struggle with. But a guy like Caleb Williams, I think we see enough on the tape that you can feel really optimistic about him making that jump.
And also just his body size, because he's not the biggest guy, but he's thick. Like he
He
has
is.
that thick
Yes.
lower body. And when you were talking about his running ability, that's his contact balance is like what his
Yeah.
strength is as a runner. It's just that like it's not like, he just bounces off guys. It's kind
Mhm.
of crazy about how he can just keep his feet and keep moving forward. So yeah, he's not Kyler or even Justin Fields or these guys that run a four something, low four something, but he's still a good athlete who can be a plus runner, which is all he needs to do because he can operate from the pocket. I've been very impressed there. I do want to see some tougher competition, but like even just the 2 games I watched on all 22, there was not there's sometimes I want him to hang in the pocket to progress a little bit, and he's gotten
Mhm.
better at that, but it's still like he hasn't made a bad decision, if that makes sense. There's a couple
Right.
times he maybe didn't find the answer that was there, but it didn't turn into a bad play, or that there wasn't something there, and then he didn't try to make too much happen. Yes, the competition lets you get away with some of that, but there hasn't been anything where I'm like, it's been more like, yeah, this he has answers. You said he has the answers to the test. It's these guys all have to find ways to win, and he has ways to win, different
Yeah.
ones, and a lot of them are ones that translate, which is operating from the pocket.
And some of that is, Lincoln Riley just scheming up the right
It's
play at the
amazing.
right
Yeah.
time. But Caleb is just a perfect
Yep.
vehicle to, actually make those plays come to life. So
Yes.
it is fun to watch.
He's a great muse for him. That's
Yes.
perfect. Yeah, no, he really is. Well, you were just mentioning like half the Alabama's defense is probably going to be playing on NFL Sundays, which is I feel like we could say that which year of Alabama defense where we could say that. But we've talked about a lot of quarterbacks, a lot of offensive guys. The defensive side of the ball, I think not just us, but this is going to be very offensive heavy draft, at least
Yeah.
early on, especially in the top 10. But any defensive players that have stood out to you so far in the first month of college football? Any ones that are kind of maybe planting the flag, or someone that you is really shining for you, Dane? I know you've highlighted a couple guys in the pre-draft or the pre-season process, but anyone that's kind of anointed or really like confirmed what you saw in the summer?
One of my favorite players in this draft class is going to be Cooper DeJean. He is the best all-around defensive back in the country in college football.
From Iowa, by the way.
Yeah,
Not
Iowa.
Alabama, not Clemson.
No, Iowa corner
Not sure about.
/ safety /
Yeah.
nickel / whatever you want to
Yeah.
call him.
You know,
He
they do
is.
offensive weapon. He's defensive weapon.
He is.
That's what he is.
Against Iowa State, he showed that. He was primarily an outside corner, but they would line him up in the slot against a tight end, which he just smothered the tight end. He's the best tackling defensive back that I've scouted in this draft cycle so far this year. He led all tacklers and or led the team in tackles against Iowa State. And then, he also plays special teams. Watch him as a gunner. Check out my film reviews on The Athletic. He, as a gunner, just his speed to get down the field, and then the awareness to kind of gear down, slow up, wait for that punt to come down, and then just make a textbook tackle. It's fun. He's also the primary punt returner for the Hawkeyes. So he does a little bit of everything because he's the best guy in that locker room, and everybody knows it. He has that. There's just a certain instinct to how he plays that he understands. He's the most reliable guy, and coaches understand that. So they put him in positions for him to just go make plays. And you kind of said, like, on offense, you want to get your best player the ball. That's kind of what DeJean, the Hawkeyes, they want to get him in position to go make plays on the ball. And so far they've done that through 2 games. He's outstanding. This is what a first round pick looks like.
That's awesome. Yeah, the best player on the field, that's what you want to see. I'm really excited to watch him, especially you just say gunner, and I love when the top players are on teams, not just returners. Usually we talk about them as returners, but just hearing guys run down the field. That's why Jameson Williams was so much fun in college, watching him as a gunner as well, and just mowing down guys.
Smith, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Oh yeah. Oh,
and DeJean, he's not like in that Travis Hunter territory of snaps, but in 2 games he's played 165 snaps. That's a lot. So
that's a lot.
Yeah, he is a guy that the coaches really rely on to go out there and make plays, and he's lived up to it so far. So yeah, I love this kid.
Any edge players have stood out? I know there's not.
Yeah, it's funny because we've talked about this, right? Like how maybe underwhelming this edge class has been.
Yeah. We talk about the receiver 2 race, the QB3 race. It's kind of the edge 1 through 5 race. It's just to figure out who anyone's going to step up this year.
And how early are they going to go? Like a guy like Jared Verse from Florida State. Like I like his explosiveness. I like the power that he plays with, the way he can incorporate his hands. I want more splash from him through 2 games. We haven't seen it. Dallas Turner, they don't let him rush more. You want to see him rush more. They just don't let him. I mean, he played some plays against the run in that Texas game that were really impressive.
Yeah.
That really stood out. I mean, go back to my top 50. There were 8 edge rushers in there. Honestly, of the 8, I think only Latu from UCLA has lived up to that, which is obviously.
And we haven't really talked about him yet, so that
right. Leatu Latu from UCLA, a little bit of a complicated evaluation because of his medical background, but he's fun on the field because he's got a diverse rush plan. He can win in different ways. There's some areas in the run game where he needs to get better, but as a pass rusher, the way that he can use that reach, the timing, the hands, there's a lot to like there. If you're unfamiliar with his background, basically, so he was a 4-star recruit, a guy that there's a lot of promise there at Washington. Back in 2020, like in the middle of the pandemic, that season, he got hurt at practice as a neck injury. He saw a bunch of specialists. He had numbness, he had surgery, and they said you have to medically retire. And so in the spring of 2021, he officially retired. He stayed close to the team and was basically like just a GA. And then after that 2021 season, he's like, I'm not giving up. I want to get back out there, but Washington would not clear him. So he transfers to UCLA back in the off season after the 2021 season. able to get cleared at UCLA. And last year, he didn't even start a game, came off the bench, but he was outstanding getting after the quarterback. Comes back for his senior year, and he stayed healthy all of last year.
Yeah.
This year, so far so good. He was lights out in that opener against Coastal Carolina. They couldn't block him. It was embarrassing. But he's really productive, and he's. But coming back to that medical stuff, that's going to be something we talk about between now and the draft. Is how much does that play a
Yeah.
factor and where he's going to be drafted? I mean, he started in my top 50 at, let me see, 23. So, I mean, up there. But the medical questions will continue to linger until we get maybe some more official info from teams after the combine.
Hey, Jalen Phillips went 18th overall.
It's uncanny how similar it is, right?
Right, and with UCLA as well involved. I know it's kind of
Right.
flipped, but yeah, but still, it's like, yeah, that's
He
kind of
had
where my mind went
Jalen
to.
Phillips had to medically retire, and you're thinking, okay, well, just cross him off my board, move on,
Yeah,
and then he resurfaces at Miami and turns himself into a first round pick. And so far, I mean, you think about it, there are a lot of pass rushers that went first round that year. That was what Quiddy Pay and
yeah.
uh,
So we
there
got
Rousseau and
yep, Rousseau.
Tryon. There are
Yep.
a bunch of pass rushers in that mix, but Phillips has been the best of that group so far.
Yeah, of the non-Micah Parsons division. But no, it's because he doesn't count. But yeah, no,
Right,
but
right.
but of that group, I mean, he's a really anointed self. He had a great year last year, and like we did a top 10 edge discussion, me, Stephen Ruiz from the Ringer, and Seth Galena from PFF, and we all three of us were like, well, the question was, who's the guy that could crack this list next year? And his name
Mhm.
came up. All three of us mentioned him. So no, it's a very similar kind of. That's where my mind went. I heard medical injury history, retired UCLA, and I was like, hey, I know this story. No, but that's a great shout. It does seem to me a lot of these edges are more useful players than maybe the bendy, twitchy edges that look like they're going to get a dozen sacks. There's Chop Robinson's interesting.
Mhm.
But it seems like a lot more of those useful types, those kind of run first stoppers, complementary rusher types. At least at this point in time, you don't know who shows up as the
That's
season goes along.
that's the thing, 'cause it's again, the number one rule of scouting is traits over production. Like
Absolutely.
I don't care what production you have. Show me the traits. Show me what you can do. But at the same time, you still want to see some of those plays being made.
Have
And
results.
Chop Robinson, I have yet to see him, really make a standout play rushing the passer so far through 2 games.
Yep.
He barely played against Delaware. So, but same thing with JT Tumalalu from Ohio State. I just want to see it. And
Right.
it's something that we know they have the ability, but in terms of separating yourself, being a top 10, top 15 guy, you still want to be able to point to the tape and say, this is why.
Yep.
It's great that he's got the traits. It's great that, potential and what he could be. But still, I want you to convince me with the tape. And so far, besides Latu, I don't know that any of these edge rushers have really done that in terms of standing out with just what they've done on the field so far.
Yeah, you want to say point at a 2-minute drill where the other team couldn't block them for 3 straight
Yeah.
plays and
Just
blow up the
yeah,
drive.
take it over.
Take it
Like
over.
that's
That's what you're drafted to do. You're supposed to be the closer.
right.
That is why you get drafted high if you're an edge guy. Yes, it's nice to be useful against the run and everything, but you gotta have some juice.
Right, exactly. And a guy like Dallas Turner, I think he's got the juices. They
Yeah,
don't let him.
yeah.
It's just that style of defense they play.
That's what
I know he doesn't
they
get a
love
ton of.
slaying them inside and having
Yeah,
the slot blitz, and that's what
right.
they like to do. That's what
Yeah,
they
he
do
doesn't
over
get
and
as
over.
many pin your ears back. Just
Yeah,
beat this guy one on one. So yeah, it's one other defensive player I want to mention too. Cameron Kitchens from Miami.
yeah.
One of only 2 safeties that made my initial top 50. He had a great game, and we talked about that A&M game with Van
Mhm.
Dyke. Kitchens, I mean, he was great. He in the third quarter alone, he had an interception. He had a near second interception, and then had a fumble recovery. He was all over the place. I think he finished with 7 tackles. Unfortunately, he had to be carted off in the fourth quarter after he collided with a receiver trying to make a tackle attempt. Good news is Mario Cristobal said he's in quote unquote good shape, which is good. No news about when he's going to be able to return to the field, but
Yeah.
good news regardless that it sounds like he's doing well because he's an outstanding talent and a guy that in this safety, we haven't seen a lot of no doubt about it safeties the last few years. This guy
Yeah.
could be that. He's at least got that has that potential.
Okay, no, that's good to know. I know the defensive tackle there, like I kind of watched. I was waiting for him to
Leonard
affect the game a
Taylor,
little
yeah,
bit. Yeah, Leonard Taylor. I was waiting for him to affect the game a little bit more, but again, it was just it's a
yeah.
breeze through all 22. And again, it's early this season. That's the thing about defensive line. They some games can be very frustrating watching them. But speaking of standouts, let's get maybe to the pros part of prospects to pros and talk about some week one rookie standouts. Dane, on the offensive side of the ball, were there any NFL rookies in week one that stood out to you so far? We're one weekend, but who stood
Right.
out for you on that first 4 days of action?
Well, I mean, who saw the Puka Nakua stat line
Puka
coming,
Nacua.
right? 14 targets, 10 catches, 119 yards. We talked about it a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
It was the category was what non first round rookie who
Yep.
could surprise. And I mean, he's a guy we talked about. I don't think any of us saw this coming in week
No.
one, but based on film study at BYU, I put a third round grade on him.
Mhm.
Athletic, he's tough, he's a savvy player. The big question was just health. He couldn't stay on the
Yep.
field. Could he stay on the field in the NFL? I don't. Well, time will tell. But he stayed on the field in week one, and I mean, you could say he was the top offensive rookie that we saw
He
so
was.
far. But I don't know. What about for you? Anybody that stood out?
Yeah, Puka Nacua, I think he was also like the most targeted rookie in week one ever or something like that, which
Sheesh.
is just, yeah, he looked great. He looked fine. Like you actually was like, wow, you looked like your fourth year pro, not a rookie starting your first game. Like he's
Right?
blocking everything. So, Zay Flowers had a nice game. The
Yeah.
Ravens wide receiver.
Look, I know we haven't like the Ravens haven't had that receiver. I know, but I was still kind of shocked to find out because going back and doing the research over the last
Yeah.
25 years, the Ravens are the only team in the NFL who have not had a wide receiver go 1,200 yards in a season or more. Like
Really?
and you think about it when you think about it, it's not surprising. But
Yeah.
then but you think about it, and look, this is a team that is or an organization that has been competitive over those 25 years. It's just
Yes.
surprising that Derek Mason didn't get in there, or Torrey Smith, or one of these guys didn't. Even with like with Joe Flacco throwing the
Yeah.
football, like one of these
Late
receivers.
career Steve Smith.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So I was pretty surprised to find that out. But Zay Flowers, I mean, to your point, he's on pace to be that guy this year,
Yeah.
especially with that target share that they're going to give him.
They're
So
feeding them. Oh my goodness.
that's it. I mean, you're only a guy like Zay Flowers can be as good as his volume. If
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
give him those targets, those catch and run opportunities, he could easily average 80 receiving yards a game. Like
Yeah.
that's not out of the realm of possibility for him in year one. So that's you know, we'll see. With J.K. Dobbins going down, how they'll change things up. And Mark
Yeah.
Andrews didn't play in that first game,
Right.
so that'll eat into the target share a little bit. But still, good showing for Zay in week one.
And another Rams rookie actually stood out. Their second round pick, Steve Avila,
Yeah, no,
the left
that's.
guard.
uh,
Yeah, he had a
I
nice
thought
game. The whole Rams O line had a nice game. He did too.
I thought him and Skoronski were the two
Yep,
offensive linemen that I thought played really
I
both
agree
at
with
left
that.
guard. And then Chandler Zavala in Carolina, a guy
Yeah.
that you're watching Carolina for Bryce Young, but it was Zavala who he was my highest graded non-combine prospect,
Okay.
and he played pretty well. Our buddy Brandon Thor tweeted out a few clips that kind of help show what Zavala did, so that was good to see. And then Jameer Gibbs, I know fantasy football owners were a little
Yeah. But
unhappy with his touches, but he led all rookies
so
in missed
explosive.
tackles forced, and then he looked so good with the ball in his hands. Like
Oh God.
he was running with power, like he was
Yeah.
bouncing off tackles, like he
Yes.
was he's a guy that I'm all in on Jameer Gibbs, even though I know some frustrated fantasy football owners out there.
Yeah, it's not his own fault. It's just
No.
how they're going to use them. All of those lines rookies look good. Laporta had some nice moments. They're using him intelligently
As
as
a
a blocker.
blocker, yeah, he looked
Yeah.
good. Yeah,
He was pulling. He had a great pull that was knocked the guy. He's tough as hell. It's just that he's
yeah,
not
he
big.
is.
That's it. And he's smart. It's just, yeah, it's not his own fault, but he's going to go to the right guy. He's going to try and always pop him. On the defensive side of the ball, including Brian Branch, one of those lines rookies, I liked him. He had
Oh
a nice
yeah.
outside the pick six. I think we're both high on him. So, but I want to throw that in there too. But any defensive rookies that stood out to you in week one?
Yeah, and Branch was my dark horse last week for defensive rookie of the year because I think he's going to get the interception
Just for
numbers, and I
moments
think
like
he'll get the
that.
tackle numbers. So, and yeah, so far so good. I mean, Jalen Carter,
Yeah.
as advertised. I know the Patriots' offensive line on the interior is a little in flux right now, but
Mhm.
still, he doesn't only lead all rookies in pressures through week one. He's tied for the NFL lead with 8 pressures. So this
Pretty
guy
good.
is a problem, and that will continue to be the fact. So Ivan Pace for the Vikings, I thought he had a
Yes.
good game. Not the result they wanted for Minnesota, but for an undrafted rookie to play the way he's been playing has been awesome to see. Although not that huge of a surprise to anybody that watched him at Cincinnati. And then Will Anderson, I thought for how you would expect the first defensive player
Mhm.
drafted, how you would expect him to play. I thought he looked pretty good in week one for the Texans.
Yeah, it's nice to see him go from that Bama defense that we just talked about with Dallas Turner to actually see him just get to tee off and
Yeah, that's
just pin
it.
those ears back. He had a good preseason. Yeah, he looks exactly as advertised. No, Jalen Carter, like you said, he looked dominant.
Yeah,
Again, you want the dominant players. Yeah. Oh, he's going against a rookie. Oh, make him look like a fifth round rookie then. That's
that's
the
it.
thing. It's like you
That's
got
it.
to make like we can say that all we want, but they got to do it. And so he did it. So that's good. That's a check
Yeah,
in his
and
book.
his first ever NFL action. So like
Yeah.
this is
Right.
this is a guy that has special ability, and as long as he's on the field, he's gonna keep
His
creating
presence will be
disruption.
known. Yep, and another guy that, didn't play a ton of snaps, but was very productive was Keanu Benton, who I know we both like, but
Yeah.
his very first snap, I think it was the 2nd or 3rd drive for the Steelers, or it was the 49ers, but Steelers
Mm,
defense, and, it was a pass rush, and he just tossed the center. They lined him up at nose a good amount, like head up nose,
yeah.
and he was just shredding the center. Like he had some really good pass rushing snaps. I've only watched the first half of that game on all 22, but I do recall some run snaps when I was watching on TV as well. But he had a great preseason. I of course like him even outside my Badger love, but he had a really nice first game at least as a rookie
And
going
they're
against
gonna need him
Steelers.
with
Uh,
Hayward out now
Absolutely,
for however long he's out on that defensive line. They're gonna need Benton to grow up quick and make an impact.
absolutely. Well, I think that does it for today. That was a nice. That was great. Talking about some QB3 discussions, which we will probably continue next week as well.
Something,
But
something
we
tells me we'll revisit here maybe in a week. So it's
Yeah,
yeah.
there's as finally get into some more conference play as well. That'll be great. But we'll just keep talking. The updated discussions, defensive players that stand out. We'll probably get some offensive line soon. But just as more tape comes in, there's more things to talk about. The NFL season keeps rolling, the college football season keeps rolling, and prospects to pros will keep rolling along. So we will see you guys next Wednesday. Thank you for tuning in. See you guys then.